Hello and welcome, and being added within this channel through as long as crypto markets, I'm going to be talking about the National Hockey League and the Toronto Raptors until the end of the regular season. Although I'm not too sure about the playoffs, I've historically done terrible in the NHL playoffs. I've never had a good year, and I don't usually bet it anyway. This game tonight between the Indiana Pacers and the Toronto Raptors looks like there's a lot of value in this game. Indiana comes in with a record of 20-11, and against the number, both teams are pretty much 500, which means Vegas has done pretty good at making lines for both the teams. Although tonight, I think it's a little off. Home record 11-5. They're on the road 9-6. Most of their games going under the total, almost 2/3 of them. Toronto with a record of 23-9, a little bit better than Indiana's. And at home, they're 11-4, just a hair bit better than they are on the road. Looking further amongst this game, we're looking at a very healthy Indiana team against a Toronto team bringing some guys back from injury, although their big men might be in bad situation tonight. And it's going to be a play on the Indiana Pacers for the spread is 7.5. I've got plus the 7.5 minus 106 on Indiana. The last time the Toronto Raptors hosted the Indiana Pacers and the spread was Toronto by 7.5 was the last time they played. That would take us back to April the 6th of 2018. I'm not too sure how many Pacers are still on that team. DeMar DeRozan and Dwayne Casey are not on Toronto, and Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green were not on the team then, and their new coach as well. And it was a blowout, almost a 20-point differential. Indiana scored 3/4 worth of points, or they got 73, but 25 a quarter has been the general average, I guess, for a 100-point game. So they got embarrassed, to say the least, and they also lost the 2 games prior to that as well. When we look at Indiana, this is their last 10 games. And this team is playing really well lately, although they got embarrassed last night, and that's another big reason I like this play. On December the 18th, with 1 day rest, of course, I'll get into the rest within this video. They lost 92-91 against a really bad Cleveland team, 12.5-point favorites. This is the second time Cleveland has had to live life without LeBron, and it's not going well. But they got the W here. Before that, they beat the Knicks. They beat Philadelphia. Philadelphia's a good team, and they did it on the road. Milwaukee's a good team as well, and they defeated them by double digits. Washington's they're a playoff contender. They beat them. Sacramento's an improved team. They defeated them. They beat Orlando as they should, and they beat Chicago like they should as well. Their 7-game winning streak came to an end last night. And my big thing on winning streaks and losing streaks, when they do have this situation where any type of good winning streak loses its first, same thing when a big losing streak wins its first after that, how you respond from that. So in a case here where a team has shown a lot of momentum playing really well, how are they able to respond to the next event, the next game, thereafter the fact? And I think it becomes an advantage when it is the next night. And that's the players not spend too much time to overthink things and all this and just get back to what they have been doing best. Toronto Raptors are coming off of a bad loss as well. They lost 95-86 on the road as they complete the 4-game West Coast trip. I wish it was a 5 or 6 game trip, but I'm glad it was at least 4, and I'm glad it was California and the area of such. Because generally speaking, when you're on a road trip of decent length and decent miles away, and then you come back to it with a decent amount of time off, there's 2 days rest here. I like to fade teams on their first game back in both NBA and NHL. I think it takes 1 game oftentimes just to get back, where that first game can very oftentimes be not as beneficial. Okay, looking further, the power rankings. Simple math is you just subtract the 2 for a spread, so that would be like 4, add in a couple points for home, that's 6, but there's a lot of reasons to state that number should be lower as well. I'm guessing the spread should probably be close to 2.5 to 3. And when I get a big differential like that of 4 points in a basketball game, that's a massive differential. So then continuing on further, They lose to Portland on the road. They did beat Golden State with with the Golden State point guard Steph Curry in the lineup, because they beat Golden State before that without him right here. But that was a home game without Curry. I thought that was a game that was winnable. I was surprised they did beat Golden State. They beat the Clippers, but the Clippers, it's a good road game. They lost to Milwaukee at home, so there's a tough team they definitely got beaten down by. They did beat a good Philadelphia team at home. And Denver at home, they lost 106-103. So good teams can go into Toronto and defeat them. I don't care about referees, although in the past, and sometimes maybe you should. NBA is an interesting sport, but there is some stats on here that is very important as well. So let's go to this one here. Statistically speaking, overall, Indiana's average result is 5.3 points, and Toronto wins by 7.5. At home and the road, Toronto usually wins by 7.5. So this is interesting when I look at the math here. Against an average team, and I haven't looked at the sample sizes of the exact teams they play at home, but if they're favored by 7.5 team points against an average team, that means against a more quality team, that number should be lower, maybe 5.5 or 6. And then when they're playing well and you're not, you reduce it a bit more. And then when we look at the injury situation, you would reduce it again, especially if Serge Ibaka doesn't go tonight. And Kyle Lowry might not even go either. Last I heard, he's still questionable. But I don't care if he plays or not. If he doesn't play, I'm loving it even more, because I think the spread's going to go way down if he's listed out. And when we look at the last 5, Indiana's average result is by 9, Toronto's by 5. They haven't been playing as well. I'm not going to look at any more of those statistics, but there's some other statistics I do want to look at. I don't care about night games or division games in this. I've already seen the home and away as far as straight up is concerned. I'm not caring about these recent trends. I do care about injuries. Indiana's got nothing on there. That's sweet. Norman Powell's probable. There's a lot of key guys that are just the staples to the team, and a lot of them are coming back. Pascal Siakam, Van Fleet, they're all probable. Kyle Lowry is questionable. And if he's not there, then it's going to be totally up to Kawhi Leonard to do it. Serge Ibaka, this one is big because the gentleman below, and he's my favorite player right now, Jonas Valanciunas. But Serge Ibaka is kind of his replacement, which only leaves Greg Monroe below that. He's dealing with swelling in the right knee, and it is unknown if he will suit up against the Pacers. Valanciunas is out, and this guy usually plays either 18-minute, maybe 20, 24, 26 minutes a game, and at least in fantasy points-wise in basketball, he is one of the best. The amount of rebounds and points and all those type of miscellaneous things he gets on a per-minute basis is phenomenal. I just wish that they'd play him more. Maybe they can't. Maybe because of the injuries, that's why. He has had injury problems in the past. But if Ibaka doesn't go, and JV obviously already out, that's going to leave a lot of problems amongst the paint, because it'll be only Kawhi Leonard. And he's even not that big of a player. He's just an amazing athlete and amazing player. But for Indiana to have this kind of record, they got to have some good players on their team as well. Now, the last key statistic I want to look at is this here. And after a loss, because that's what both teams are coming off of. So when Indiana is off a loss, they are 8-3. And whether it's at home and road, 4-2 at home, 4-1 on the road. The Raptors are 4-2 off, or 4-4. They're 50%, both at home and on the road, off a loss. So the Pacers have done a lot better this year, coming off of those bad situations and instantly rebounding compared to the Toronto Raptors. And that's both teams are in that spot. And the fact that Indiana hasn't had much time to go through that loss, and I haven't seen the highlights yet of that game, but you got to think that they're going to want to come out, and they got a difficult opponent. They've done well against these past teams like Philadelphia and Milwaukee just recently, that they can go out there and defeat these guys. And when we look at this on the days rest situation, 0 days rest, the Indiana Pacers are 5-0. 4-1 against the number with an average score of 109 to about 100. So close to a 9-point victory and such. And with one-day rest, Indiana, this is where you look at something. This is a team with a very good record, barely under 500 with one-day rest. So the early thing is play them if they don't have one-day rest and go against them if they do. The Raptors are also phenomenal without the rest, but they're also 1-3 against the spread. Even though they're 3-1 with 2 days rest, this is the spot they are on. Their average score is only 109 to 106, or a 3-point differential. So therefore, I am very confident long term that if Kyle Lowry plays and Serge Ibaka plays, that this spread should probably be about 3.5 to 4 for Toronto, maybe even 4.5, 5 at most. But it's hard to give me that 5 number or put the 5 number in when I look at all of these miscellaneous things in here. And the fact these guys coming back are still going to be banged up. And then I look at it if you take 1 or 2 of those guys out, how those numbers just have to go significantly lower. Each one is bigger than the other, or as big as just both big, because the big man up front, Kyle Lowry, is also the guy that is what I call it the quarterback in basketball, the guy that brings the ball up the court, the guy that gets a lot of assists, the guy that handles a lot of the ball and has a lot of possession time. And if you take that out of the lineup, thankfully they got the key guys coming back, because these staple guys like the Norman Powells and such are good enough for it. And obviously Kawhi Leonard, I think it's better when Kawhi Leonard has another guy like that, sort of like when he had Tony Parker in San Antonio. So then that is it. 7.5 points I'm taking with the Indiana Pacers. And playing the money line or taking the odds. Why is that doing that? But anyway, that's how I'm going to be playing tonight's game. I believe the spread is way too high. If all the players on Toronto were really, really healthy, then I don't even see why I could even make that number higher than 6 even. Normally, when I like the favorites and I see this, then I usually bet them early on because I think the number is going to go higher. And underdogs, I usually have a tendency to wait. But I wouldn't be surprised if this number does creep lower. Thank you for tuning in and have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.